welcome back. It's now 10 minutes away from 7 o'clock, and as promised before the break, we're sitting down to talk about a new research and a publication entitled The Maya Forest Gardener. And joining us for this conversation, we have researcher, co-author of The Maya Forest Garden, Dr. Annabel Ford. We have Master Forest Gardener, Alfonso Zul. And we also have leadership mentor, Cynthia Ellis-Topsy. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Well, good morning to you.
Now, this has been something that we've been having a conversation for quite some time. Dr. Ford, you started looking at this at a time probably about 10 years ago?
Whoa. I think it's my lifetime. My first research trip here was 1972, if you can believe it. I was a student, and my wonder was how the Maya were able to live in the context of the forest. And it's taken me all the way up to the book to actually understand, and it's my collaboration with people like Alfonso Zul, Narciso Torres, and many others that have really opened my eyes, if I can use that term, to the very importance of the kind of life that actually is building biodiversity, creating soil, feeding people, and keeping the landscape in good shape. And I think the ancient Maya did that, and today we are almost at the point of losing that capability, because the people that I have been collaborating with in the last 5 years, about an equal number have died. And I'm very concerned, and I feel my book is almost, at the 11th hour. We're here to bring people up to that.
When you look at a topic like this, especially when this is one of the little known sites, a lot of the work that you did focuses on El Pilar. So why that site is critical for this particular research?
It's the history now. We have a chance to show that here at El Pilar. It's an amazing site. I call it archaeology under the canopy, and that very canopy is the forest garden. And I've learned about every tree. I walk by every tree, and if I'm with Alfonso, he'll tell me what the name is in Mayan, what its uses are, and what he remembers from his growing up, right?
Yes.
So you still have some of the tradition that's passed down. Let's just, I wanted to ask, obviously as an archaeologist, people are accustomed to that particular field where you are looking for remains from the past. But what you focused your energies on was looking at what exists now, especially when it comes to the forest and the life that is taking place there. Why was that something that you were interested in?
Well, of course, that was where the Maya lived.
Yeah.
So I've learned that in English, I will say the culture of the forest is the nature. The nature of the forest is the culture of the Maya. If you ask a Maya person to say what is nature and what is culture, they do not differentiate. It's all one concept. And I mean, I discovered that later, I have to say, but I was discovering it as I did my work. Now, I survey and I find ancient remains. It's not like I don't. But I'm looking at the context of them. I'm looking at the houses. I'm looking at how they use the landscape, where they were and where they weren't. Where it's clayey, there are no houses. Where it's rocky and has the uplands, it's beautiful. Lots of sites. So it's an amazing experience just to say. And then you walk with Alfonso, for example, and he'll say, well, of course you can't grow cacao in that kind of environment. You can't grow corn in this kind of environment. And then you start looking at their forest gardens, and everything's going on in there. Probably an average person has more than 100 different plants growing in their backyard, and not to mention what their field looks like. And it's a cycle. So when you see the forest, it's the end of a cycle that opened up, like the forestry people talk about the gap. The gap is the milpa. That's a very diverse system. And they're already building it to have trees so that by 8 years it has trees that are full grown. By 16 years they're producing fruit, and then they're in another place. It's a cycle going on all around. It's not shifting agriculture, not the the field itself that we see, but it's all invested.
It's a well thought out process. That's
Exactly.
obviously what you
Sophisticated.
came to find. Yeah. Let's talk about how you made the link with Alfonso, and then we'll talk to him about his experience. How did you make the link?
We were just talking about that. He was an officer in agriculture. You'd think that I would have found him there because I'm so interested in agriculture, but he had to retire and write a book about the history of San Antonio before I found him. And I honestly, I have just even 2 days ago, I was asking him how that cycle works, because I know it in English, or I know it in what I'm told. It calls Cosecha, Yaxquin, and San Jose, but he told me what the real Mayan terms are. Yaxquin is Mayan, but the Cosecha is not. And so, I mean, it just was it was sort of a process. I think we had to come together.
So you found him after you found his book that he published as well?
Right. And I did not let this book that we published called The Maya Forest Garden go out until he read, critiqued, and we discussed chapter 2, which is on the Milpa cycle. So he's as much a collaborator of this as Ron is, in fact. Ron is an ethnographer, by the way, Ron Nye.
Okay. And Alfonso, let's bring it over to you. We introduced you as a master forest gardener. What does that mean?
I think it's a new word that Annabel coined somehow. But fundamentally, it has to do with the way the Maya farmers use the land, use the forest to benefit themselves and to benefit the society. That's basically what it is. It is away from the idea that the Maya farmer just cleared the bush, burned up everything, and destroyed the landscape and couldn't care anything less. But that is not true. Basically, that is not true.
When we think about this kind of stuff, I'm glad that you're raising that point, because very often, even within the formal educational sector, you're taught about slash and burn, and you say, oh, it's something that the Maya practiced, and that's it. But we don't understand how it actually works and how it was sustainable, or was it?
Yes, it is sustainable, depending on how you look at it. You see, in the past, the Maya farmer catered for himself and for the elite groups that rule the country. And that elite group is not so big. So they took care of themselves as well as the needs of the others, simply by farming with very
simple
tools,
but very sophisticated knowledge,
which is still being used today. So with, let's say, 3 acres or 4 acres of land, they were able to feed themselves as well as make a contribution to the larger society.
How much of these traditions are maintained today?
Very little now, because the system of land tenure has changed. One time we had access to the area that is still the Maya land area, where we can make a claim on this specific location. There we make our field, our plantation as we call it, and then we move in cycles, 20-year cycles, until we come back to the same spot again.
So there was a lot of movement that took place over what span of area?
Over an area, something like a square mile, I would say.
Okay.
About a square mile. You go around.
How does this tie into, you know, in the conversation in the public domain, a lot has been about Maya land rights and how they utilize the areas in and around their village. How did that tie into what you're talking about?
Because to the Maya farmer, the land is not a commodity. The land is a part of his life. His life depends on the land, and how he uses it will determine whether he enjoys the life he has or not. So he uses the forest judiciously, he uses the products of the forest judiciously, he takes care of it judiciously so that it will continue to replenish what he uses, and he can come back again after a number of years and find the same benefits that he derived in the first instance. I'll give you just one instance. When the Maya leaves his land to fallow for 10 years, all the noxious weeds that choked his corn in the 3rd year of cultivation are eliminated. And he begins a new cycle. The land automatically takes care of all the undesirable weeds that were present when he left it.
Is
today, just a minute, today, By the new land system where we are confined to one area and you keep on working one place, has led us now to the excessive use of chemicals now, so that we can suppress the undesirable weeds. And there's no getting away from it. You cannot clean it no other way other than with the use of chemicals. And those chemicals are leading to the contamination that we have today.
I was about to ask, what I hear from you, from both of you, from what you've explained so far, it was that there was an established system of sustainable farming taking place. And perhaps because it was spread out over different areas, it wasn't really something that we acknowledged before. As William pointed out, we all learned in school that the Mayans did subsistence farming and also did the slash and burn methodology. What have you found in your research to add to this concept that the traditions of the Maya have been about sustainability?
Well, it speaks to itself. They start there were farmers here before there were temples. The temples started small where the farmers lived, and where more farmers lived, they became bigger. And it crossed, 3,000 years. I don't know about sustainability. We're not doing so well in 50 years, so, I mean, that speaks strongly to it. And that the forest itself, all the dominant trees of the forest today are useful. That's not an accident. I mean, they have beauty, they have medicine, they have construction material, they have household production products, they have sweets, they have, I mean, whatever you can name, they have, and it's their save you or something like that, and they know where to go to get that. It's their meat market.
Let's bring Cynthia into the conversation and talk about your role as leadership mentor.
First of all, I would like to thank you for allowing us this space to celebrate Belize, because the Maya and the forest is Belize. And I got into this conversation even as my birth. I was delivered by a Maya midwife. Okay, so that's, my mother always says that you were in before you knew it. Interestingly, my husband, the late Harriet Topsy, was the archaeological commissioner of Belize. He passed 20 years ago, and I went in search of archaeologists who knew him to celebrate his work and to celebrate the Belizean face to archaeology and a lot of this research. And I went to the archaeology symposium looking for Dr. Annabel Ford, because I had heard her name so much in our household. And a lot of this, she and I talk all the time, is divine order. This was many years ago. I went in search of her. And going directly to her, I didn't know she was Dr. Annabel Ford. I asked her, could you tell me where I could find Dr. Annabel Ford? And she said, I hope so. And the rest is history. I have followed her ever since. And I was so amazed at this wealth and this treasure that we have in El Pilar, and the forest gardeners and the communities. And my function has been a connector, a mentor, a facilitator to ensure that we as Belizeans take leadership, take ownership, take participation in what is not, it's not just a project, it's a movement. It's not an event. It goes beyond celebrating and passing on, preserving, passing on the baton to present and future generations, so that it is not only for Belize, it is for the region, and it is for the world. So I've been fascinated at the programs, the school garden, Kanakash, which is in Santa Familia, where Dr. Ford and others and the forest gardeners have passed on this knowledge of El Pilar in the school curriculum. So I have been a mentor in the sense of, one, celebrating leaders that came before us, the Maya and the indigenous people, and ensuring that this is a journey, that this book by Dr. Ford capsules or embraces or compasses the blood, sweat, and tears of many who have come long before us.
Now, In some of the stuff we've read, Dr. Ford, you talk about the fear of losing the Maya forest. What is your hope in terms of releasing this particular book? Is it, and I hear you speaking about school programs that you've integrated, that have integrated this particular work. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, this is really an important point, and we are looking for people who want to be involved side by side with more master gardeners learning. We need scholarships to help them do that. There are people, I think that Alfonso told me it's a culture to be an agriculturalist, and there are people who could feel that, but if we don't catch them at small, because in the days when I divide my world between the pre-plastic and the post-plastic, and we're in the post-plastic now. The son and daughter walk behind their parents to learn. People aren't doing that, and we need to re-engage the very view and the observations, the skill to look. It's not something you can learn in a day, and I spend all my days when I'm with my collaborators hoping I'll catch a little bit. Being with someone and looking for water and finding out it's a little fly that I might have gone like this, and that tells me that in 100 meters is water. Or taking a hammock and placing it between trees and realizing you're just over the Tepescuintli hole and that's where your meat market is. Finding your site because the avocado is there. These are not things I could do. I try, but these are things that are knowledge that you have to pass on. So we really are looking for volunteers to help us build curriculum. I have this work that I've been doing with the Maya Forest Gardeners at the Santa Familia School. It's called Kanankash. Kash. It means well cared for forest, and we want to make that for everyone, and also to see it as a model to bring people to the forest and the garden. Really, really a wonderful opportunity to both get involved in research, to help educate, to build scholarships, and to volunteer and create a better future for everyone.
We have developed a coloring book, which is used as one of the resources and material in the garden. And it is a part of the school in Santa Familia. We have trained teachers and professors from all over the world and in Belize on how to integrate it into the curriculum.
So does it teach children how to identify plants?
Yes.
Is that what it does?
Yes,
Not really. It just gives them
some
examples.
of the plants. Some of the plants are in the coloring book, and the uses of the plants.
You really need to engage with the local forest gardeners and the people who really understand the nature of the place.
And it's bilingual.
Yes.
Why was that an important?
You bring up another point. El Pilar, when I first came upon it, I was with Jaime Awe, and he says, you know, we're reading, because I was looking in the area and I knew we had to have sites up there, and we drove up to a place where he thought ought to be a site. We encountered El Pilar, and when I went to map it, of course, there was a causeway that went to the west, but I didn't do much about that. I knew something was there I could see, but when in 1993 I began actually working at the site, I went and presented my case to Guatemala, and they said, well, let's get working. And there is a place I call Pilar Poniente, linked to Pilar, the south part of Pilar, across the political boundaries, but it shows that the Maya used the whole area as a region. Today it's a binational protected area in Belize and in Guatemala. I would love for it to be a peace park in the future,
Now,
I have some idea.
I want to go back to Alfonso just for a minute, because we have these conversations about agriculture very often, and we know people are not beating down doors to be educated when it comes to any kind of agricultural knowledge. So how do you engage young people, and can you engage young people to make this you know, something that by your very life and your existence and your passion, that they understand the importance of it and they want to carry on the traditions?
That's why I mentioned to Dr. Ford from the beginning that agricultural life and practice is a part of the person's culture. Unless it is, you cannot get it moving. I was born and raised in a Maya village, and from the age of 10, I assisted my father to take care of his plantation. You have to love it. For you to love it, You must grow into it. You have to look at it as a part of your very being. Otherwise, it is something that you will learn to detest. Because not liking agriculture is something that we learn. So what we are doing with Canan Cash, as Dr. Ford is saying, we have a small plot where you can show the children, this plant here, do you know it? Your mother uses it. What is its name? What do you use with it? So many uses of it every day that you don't know it. You can just grow it in your yard. It doesn't have to be a big area. You can plant it in your yard. If everybody planted something in their yard that they consume every day, you would be surprised how much things can change and how much life can be improved health-wise. I'll give you an example. I'm a retired public officer. I have a pension. But I keep on teaching agriculture even today. I have a plot of land in San Antonio where I spend 2 days a week. It's right on the roadside where people pass. They hail me, they talk to me, they ask me questions, and I share my knowledge with them. If they want a little bit of seed, there is my seed. You can have it. Go with it. This is the way you plant it. This is the way you take care of it. It's something that I keep doing every day, even though I am no longer in the public service. That's the kind of action we need, so that we just don't talk, but we do.
And I like that you brought it up, because a natural segue for me has to do with, we see a movement towards urban gardens.
Perfect.
Right? And
the Maya were doing it all the time.
Exactly. So that's what I wanted to get at, that, you know, somehow people started seeing farming or as something removed, you know. So how do you get this sense, especially given the move towards urbanization? How can people, like Mr. Alfonso said, bring back agriculture as a part of the culture, that they grow up loving it and seeing it as a part of what needs to be done?
And we haven't talked about climate change too. You know, anyone goes out in the sun, do they run to be in the sun when it's hot, or do they find shade? And the best shade is a tree. So just simply planting a tree, and if that tree has fruit, you get the shade and the fruit. And if that tree produces seeds and you get a next tree, you're going to start getting your forest garden. I rented a little house in Cayo, and I brought all my colleagues of the forest garden in to help me create a forest garden, because it was just grass. And first we had to get rid of the grass. Now I have the only, I tell BTL when they're coming, to just it's the house with the trees. And they say, what color? I don't know. But I have medicine, I have flowers, I have herbs, I have a caoba, I have a mahogany back there, I have palms. Yes, I mean, and really everyone who, and I was putting things in, it's only a 50 by 100 lot with a house, so it's not big, but I wanted to have everything there. So it's a little bit of a jungle, but I eat isote, I have allspice, I have macaw, I have cacao. I mean, I don't know what I don't have there.
I want to bring up a very specific example that we know to be the truth in the South. Cacao is obviously one of the emerging businesses in the South. And in conversation with the Cacao Growers Association, they speak about some of the Maya villages still grow it. But not necessarily, but it's not enough. And they're having difficulty getting people involved in agriculture. And this is something we hear across the board. It could be, and we know, we've seen a lot where cultures change, where the children are going to school, which is wonderful. They should be in school. But at the same time, they're not developing the interest in doing this type of work, even though, in the case of cacao, opportunities exist. How would you see yourself? But how would you see yourself overcoming that particular barrier? That there is a need to maintain the culture and the tradition that takes place, but there's been a shift in the way young people think at this time.
I would like to address that as one who has been blessed to be in different fields, as an educator in the formal and informal sector. The University of the West Indies, under the direction of Miss Jane Bennett, was inspired to visit the forest gardeners and the forest garden. And based on that, she helped to along with myself, facilitate a conversation in Belize City, in the Jane Usher Boulevard area, about urban gardening. People need to feel celebrated and valued, and we as educators need to value within the curriculum for young people that it is something that is worthwhile. People have felt devalued. People have felt that the way to live is to go and get a job. And when jobs do not exist, you get frustrated. So the campaign or the movement, is to celebrate gardening as equitable or even more equitable as going to the building of the university. So the classroom then becomes the world outside. No child left indoors. That is our mantra for that movement of training teachers. So it's really a paradigm shift that we are on in terms of validating across the board in the curriculum. It is okay to do agriculture, and to make it okay also encourage gardens within the school system. Take the young people, the children on tours. We've been on many tours taking schools to El Pilar. Last week we were at St. John's College, we were at the junior college in Benke, and there's an excitement. In the celebration of 30 years of El Pilar, we gathered 76 young people who went to El Pilar. It was raining, it was pouring, but they said they would go back again. And the children are not the issue, the young people are not the issue. It is the way in which we value and the way in which we educate.
Now, we've had, and I like that you bring that up, because we've had, for example, programs that were not sustained, like REAP, to actually teach education within the school system. Is there space for us to have a return to that kind
absolutely,
of...
Absolutely.
I would love it.
That is,
and what would it take?
Today, the presentation of this book is a celebration of people from all walks of life. We're inviting universities, we're inviting policymakers, the forest gardeners, and they are at the center of the celebration. We've invited the gentleman from Peace Corps.
Image Factory.
Image Factory. It will be at the Image Factory this morning at 10 o'clock.
So the book is being launched today.
It is being presented
it's being
today.
Presented today. So let's talk about the details about that. Yes. It's going to happen at the Image Factory.
10 o'clock. We have a great Master of Ceremonies, Renee Villanueva. We have short presentations by very notable people, including John Morris from Archaeology, Jane Bennett from University of West Indies, and Carlos Moreno of the U.S. Embassy. And we are looking forward to just celebrating it. I called Angelus Press to try to get the book on time. Hopefully in the next weeks we'll start seeing it available in Belize.
And as you pointed out, you have specific objectives in terms of what your long-term plan is. One, you need volunteers,
right, and
also people who'd be willing to provide scholarships.
Yes, to walk side by side. It's and I think both the idea that it has to be part of your culture and the idea that the children, I mean, we have had no problem when we're all out there, and Alfonso's talking to them. They are excited. They want to know. They test it. He says, try this, feel this, you know, like the ziricote that's rough. The Maya words, he gets them to say the Maya names for them, and they're very excited about it. And you know, vanilla and chocolate are from the Maya forest. So these are things that come right from here we should be proud of. We all tell them that they should be cacao and tsil. Yeah, you have to learn how to speak Mayan at the same time. It's not hard, it's just a practice, just like with the forest garden.
And even though it's Maya, we embrace all cultural participation. It's a model for the Garifuna, for everyone.
But if we are looking at the historical sustainability, we need to look to the Maya system, and we all can do it. We can do it in Santa Barbara, where I'm from. I have chaya growing in my yard in Santa Barbara.
You can do it in Belize City. There's some urban gardening projects that are currently going on.
And we have space, so why have lawns? You know, that's not very friendly. And this renews the earth. It shades it, cools it. I mean, if we're talking about climate change, it keeps the soil in because you have roots. So it's everything.
So people can get the book in Belize City, as you pointed out?
Hopefully. Soon.
Soon.
Yeah.
Through the Angela.
Or you can order it on Amazon.
You can order it at Amazon and get it. That's for sure. It's definitely on. Has a lot of interesting reviews accumulating on Amazon. Everyone's very startled and really quite excited about it.
Because it's the first of its kind for this area.
Great.
Well, we'd like to thank you all for sitting down and having this conversation. Obviously, this is just a starter.
Yes, we'll come back and tell you what the next thing.
An appetizer.
We want to thank you
We
all
plan a
for
celebration in July, so this is an appetizer.
We want to take the trek out to El Pilar.
Yes,
to bring you out.
Please do.
We are celebrating 20 years, one Bakhtun of protection of the government of Belize through archaeology in July. So maybe we can do something then.
All right.
Well, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it'll be to talk about arts in primary schools and skills training that is taking place right now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.